Okay, our next speaker, I have some knowledge of, Deborah Kane. She's the Staffordshire Hoard Conservation Project Manager at Birmingham Museums and Art Gallery, and she's talking about gold fever.
Yeah, good morning everybody. I'm going to talk to you today briefly about the gold fever phenomena that is the Staffordshire Hoard. In 2009, Terry Herbert, the metal detectorist, found what's now known as the Staffordshire Hoard. And after 7 days of digging and washing in the sink at home, he finally alerted the Fines Liaison Officer in Birmingham. Terry also stayed involved with the whole dig, and it was only at the point where the collection was housed at the museum that interaction ceased. The archaeological teams from Stafford and Birmingham worked on the site, and again I would say were slightly grabbed by the gold fever with wet washing and cleaning objects on site to see what exciting things they have found. Before the hoard was acquired, we were lucky enough to put some of it on display in the museum, which led to queues around the block, with everyone coming to see what was known as the greatest archaeological find in the Midlands. And the main consensus out of that was, it cannot go to London, it's ours. The hoard was then acquired by the Potteries Museum in Stoke and Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery. And at Birmingham, the team of conservators, the curator and the public programme team have created an ongoing public programme and public access to the hoard due to the demand of the people in the local area, but also worldwide. And all of this work includes public tours down to the conservation studio, so you can actually see the hoard in the flesh, weekend events, talks, written blogs for the website, video blogs of the conservation team at work, web chats, involvement with the National Geographic documentaries about the hoard, involvement with other TV crews, involvement with the local press, family and school events, and conservation placements. However, there has, as an open and inclusive project, some people felt there may actually have been undue influence on the project from funders or supporters. For example, the National Geographic funding for the conservation team, seen by some, particularly the conservation team, as an enlightened piece of funding, but by others as an intrusion that allowed undue access to the objects. We have English Heritage, who funded the dig and who will be the main funder of the research programme, but they also have specific management processes that must be adhered to. We have the local councils who were involved in the Mercian Trail summer exhibition and who feel a sense of entitlement to access and display of these objects. We have local funders such as Cadbury, who are not supplying us with chocolate, but are hopefully supplying us with things like XRF and X-ray facilities. But obviously they want to see how their equipment is used and that to be profiled. And then of course we have the public, who have a desperate need to know what is going on with their collection. So with all that in mind, these are the questions I'm putting forward, which are slightly different to the ones that have been in the pack that we have. Is it a good thing to have such an open and publicly accessible project? Who should be able to influence the way a project is managed? And does the inclusiveness impact on the academic legitimacy of the project and the safety of the objects?
Discuss, yes?
Discuss.
Thank you very much. So we're going to ask Jonathan to respond.
Well, yet again, I'm not sure there's any ethics involved with this at all, but the question is, can stakeholders have too much influence? And the answer is obviously not, because they're stakeholders, and therefore is it individual stakeholders have too much influence? You seem to be suggesting that Conservators, as one of the stakeholders, should have more influence than they do. Is that the case?
No, I wasn't actually. No. I think potentially there's lots of influences on and around the conservation team, and sometimes pressure may be put to bear to move in one direction than the other.
Yeah.
And does that is that allowing free sort of discussion and decision making, or is it enforced?
At a object-by-object conservation treatment level, is anyone trying to influence what the Conservatives say should happen?
Yes.
Yes? Against your wishes? Or against the Conservatives' wishes?
Again, I might say yes, but only in so much as they actually don't want anything doing.
All right.
Which...
Yeah. So you're not being asked to do anything unethical, you're just being asked to do nothing.
Yes.
Okay. It seemed to me that this is, I mean, the only experience I can bring to bear is that I worked in a large organisation, a large museum, where different people thought they were the people who were the people who should be making the decisions. And it mostly came down to personalities and how devious or how open and honest you chose to be. But I don't think if you wrote down the decision will be made by English Heritage or the decision will be made by the head of conservation, everyone would want to argue that. You know, no one would want that to be written down anywhere. So you can't have a written ethical guideline that says this is the decision-making process based on people or personalities. So it does come down to who can argue the most cogently in the whatever fora are built up for that discussion to take place. From the Conservatives' point of view, you just have to make sure that the conservation, as people who know certain things that are necessary for the decision-making process, are present at that particular discussion table. That's all I can say. Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan. Questions from the floor? We have David first, and then we have one at the back.
Thank you. David Lee, your questions are really interesting ones, but in a sense they bounce back to you. Can I bounce your third question back to you? Because we're not in a position to answer that one, at least not as nearly as good a position as you. You know, has there been an impact on the academic legitimacy of the project and all the safety of the objects? You know, you tell us.
Well, safety of the objects, I would say absolutely not.
No,
I mean, I think
good.
the inclusiveness and the public accessibility is fantastic. I think it's the way forward for conservation. But the academic legitimacy, I don't think I can comment on that either. But all the general discussions around it are that, you know, projects aren't. This is a new way. It's a new way that people are working to actually have such inclusiveness, and potentially maybe academics are used to having that themselves for longer before the public get hold of it.
Thank you.
We have a speaker at the back. I think I recognise him. Anyone else ready to follow on? Stick your hands up.
Bob Child, did you consider re-internment of the objects for their safety and for their conservation?
Me personally, no.
Or was it considered?
As far as I'm aware, no. Would I have been included in that decision-making process? Probably no.
Okay. You happy with that, Bob?
No.
You want to respond?
It's a question that's never asked, really,
Yeah.
is it? But once they've emerged, even though they've been safe for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, secure, conserved, preserved, it's never considered that it's ethical or even necessary to consider whether they should be put back into those places.
Yeah, reburial. Yes, absolutely. Now, I've just had a prompt from my left. We have some people here from the Newport Ship Project, I believe. Would they care to make themselves known to the panel? Would one of you... We thought you might like to respond. As apparently you're dealing with a very similar style of project in terms of communication and community.
To some extent, yes. in the sense that there was a huge public outpouring initially when the ship was discovered, and the public really is the reason probably that the ship was saved. Newport City Council, for various reasons, really did not want to have to front up the money to excavate the ship. And it was this public outpouring, and the fact that we have lots and lots of stakeholders now as a result of that, many of whom are members of the public who formed a Friends of the Newport Ship group. I think the major difference is that we don't have gold. Just going back to the point, we have lots of bits of wood and organic things, and some inorganics, but most of it is not. There's a certain amount of excitement, and people love ships. So that helps. There's this idea, so that draws the people who just think ships are the greatest thing ever, and I'm one of those, so I understand where they're coming from. But we don't have that kind of, we're making the cover of the National Geographic because it's not shiny, it's not pretty. It's not the same aesthetic value that the Staffordshire Hoard has as concerns people like National Geographic and the public. So I think that's one of our major differences, just that we're coming from a totally different style of object. So we don't have quite as much attention as has been focused on the Staffordshire Hoard. So we probably have a bit more freedom that way. But we do have a lot of stakeholders.
Okay. Katie, I think you wanted to respond as well.
Yes, it was our experience in the National Trust is increasingly that as soon as we acquire a property, it has to be kind of opened instantly to the public, and that's what happened at Tinsfield. And Mary Greenacre was here. I don't know if she still is here. No? But that project was very much organised around the idea that the whole act of conserving and opening the property engaged with the public, and it wasn't just telling people about the conservation and what we were doing, but that they were being involved in the process. And I don't think that, in fact, I can see Mary Greenacre outside the door, so she doesn't know. I'm quoting her experience. Yep. So merely the fact that I think it didn't have any impact on what I perceive to be the academic quality of the project, because most of the stuff would not have been catalogued or been made visible were it not for the volunteer workforce working on inventorising them. What it would have had an impact on was the way things were cared for, so perhaps a conservation impact.
Okay. Kieran, you want to
Can I just briefly mention there's a similar project, but probably goes further on from your own, where the public is actually involved in the conservation of the finds from Sittingbourne, known as CSI Sittingbourne. Have you looked at that as kind of an example of how far you can go, or
I have.
Too far?
The feeling with Sittingbourne project, from a lot of people's point of view, is that has already gone too far. So to do that with gold would be a highly dangerous and contentious thing to do.
Okay, Deborah, we need one more question. Okay. Andy?
Just talking about stakeholders. Andy Calver. I was the one who said you would say this every time. Hats on, yeah. He talked about stakeholders and gave a whole long list there. Where's Terry?
Terry's out of it now. He has his money. He's gone.
Why? Is he not interested? He's not interested in what happens to it. What happens to it. Is he genuinely not interested, or has he just been excluded?
As far as I'm aware, he's genuinely not interested. Or he's certainly not interested in conservation.
Okay. Should we wind it up there? Thank you very much, Deborah. Okay. Should we wind it up there? Thank you very much, Deborah.